Another episode of Tales from the Forlorn Dopes. I am your host, Cybersmily.
I am your co-host, Wisdom000, and greetings, programs. We're glad to be back. Running a little hectic on my side. I got to apologize for that. I wasn't able to uh, post about today's episode, so those of you who are joining us, thank you so very much for being here.
Yes.
Um, today we are going to be reviewing the final gear book, Maximum Metal, because we don't really count Black Hand Street Weapons. It's just reprinted material from everywhere else. But yeah, Maximum Metal, the heavy metal guide to high powered ordnance.
Yep.
Um, Before we begin, though, we'll get caught up on uh, everything new in the franchise and the genre itself. There's not really a whole lot to bring up this week, though. At least not on my
No.
end. Did you find anything, Bill?
So from movie wise, Electric State is supposed to be coming out shortly. Looks like it's a post apocalyptic AI versus human robot kind of apocalypse happening. Um, Chris Pratt and Bobby Brown.
Millie Bobby Brown,
Bobby Brown. Blah, blah, blah.
and not the guy from New Edition.
Not him. There's another one that's supposed to be coming out called Renner, which is about an AI shelter guy who creates a AI that kind of controls life. Starring Malcolm in the Middle. So
Wait, really?
yeah, Renner. Renner.
No, I mean really starring the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, like
Yeah,
the kid.
yeah, the kid Malcolm.
I thought he had like some fucked up. I know he races cars, but I thought he had some fucked up brain thing that like prevented him from like memorizing lines or some shit. I don't
Frankie
know.
Muniz.
Yes, I think Munoz. That's the first thing he's acted in. Fuck, I can't remember. Decades?
Yeah, so that's
Maybe the first thing he's done as an adult.
yeah, I would say so. I mean, yeah, it's been a while, but I guess he needs money.
Well, I mean,
found a
it's
good
nice to see him
project.
trying to make a comeback. I liked him as a child actor, I guess. Malcolm in the Middle was a pretty good show.
Yeah, there was another
Um,
teaser I saw, like Futura Days or something like that, which kind of looks cyberpunk. Um, couldn't find it on IMDb, so I'm not quite
hmm.
sure it will be coming out, or if it's just I. So it looks like kind of like the peripherals, in which there's a little bit of time traveling, at least sending your mind into the future. So,
Yeah.
little peripheral type. Um, but we'll see. The thing that sucks is Dark Horse Digital is shut down. Um,
Yeah, that's a blow.
you have digital copies, and when you're using the app, you can still use it until the summer, and then it goes away. So if you bought any books on the digital thing like me, I don't own them. So the
The email I got said that those would still be
they're
available to
available,
you.
but I cannot download them. And basically said the
Ah,
only way you're going to be able to view them is either make sure you don't delete the app on your phone, or until the summer when the website goes completely dark. So yes, I can still own them as long as I have the app. But as soon as the app
Oh,
goes away,
that's
so it's kind of like a Kindle book and a Nook book, and like how Amazon model is, you don't own the thing, which used to
yeah,
be.
some bullshit. In other words,
And that's the other thing I think Cyberpunk kind of got got wrong. Um, Everything's a subscription. Nothing is owned by anybody
I mean,
except the corporations.
I don't think anybody in the '90s could have seen that coming.
Yeah,
That's
that's dark.
like they certainly had like everything available online to you, like that had been predicted. But the idea that if you pay for something, you don't actually own it anymore is just ridiculous.
Well, you're licensing it.
Yeah, you're renting it. Um,
The guy who invented that needs to be taken out and beaten with a stick.
Beaten with a stick, boiled in his own pudding. On the plus side, Pantheon's season 2 was finally added to Netflix.
Still
So
gotta
you got both
watch that.
seasons in one place. Oh, it's very good. It's zero action. Like it's
Right.
not an action anime, but it is hardcore cyberpunk and very like deep into the philosophical and cerebral like edge of the genre. Slow burn, but it's worth it. I haven't finished season 2, so I can't say what the end of it's like. And it's sad that it's from like 2022, so it's likely this is all we're ever going to get. But
Right. Well, you never
the
know.
first season was phenomenal, and what I've seen of the second season has been great so far.
I mean, I've seen shows resurrected before, so. And I think it took a little while for it to get onto Netflix.
Yeah, it was coming out at the tail end of uh, COVID, and there was just a glut of stuff hitting everywhere at the same time. Um, just before, I want to say it's just before the writer's strike, when suddenly there was nothing.
Right.
Or I don't know. Um, yeah, that's. There's another series on Netflix that just dropped called Tomorrow Plus One or Tomorrow Plus I. It's human cloning, sex bots, uh, basically Thailand in the future, and all the things that entails. It's again, it seems more. It's a series, so it's a little bit of a slower burn, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Check it out. Yeah. Also, I re-listened to Count Zero. Recently. Still, Gibson, the Sprawl series, such an awesome series.
Yeah,
I think
I
Count
mean,
Zero
we
has always
owe
been my favorite.
so
out
very
of them.
much. I'm still a Burning Chrome fan. I like all the short little glimpses into the future. Um, I don't know. Gibson's writing to me.
Too flowery.
It's a bit flowery. I don't know. He when he starts describing the net or anything like that, it's like a switch gets flipped, and suddenly he's just droning on about these weird. Um, I don't know. It just feels disconnected from the rest of the narrative of what's happening. Do you know what I mean? Am I the
Yeah,
only one who feels that way?
I get it.
Uh,
On
yeah,
the
I love his writing. I love Burning Chrome. Um,
So on the Cyberpunk 2077 side, there's not too much news of late. I still feel that there's another patch coming, just because of some people seeing QA builds out on Steam.
Hmm.
So could be anticipating something maybe in the next quarter. I know they like to push them out after they do a quarterly announcement. The company. As far as I know, they're still trucking on with another animated series as well as a live action. Those are still being worked on. The Boston offices are, from what I understand, settled, and they are on a big drive to start hiring people. So it's coming.
Yeah. At this point, things are starting to happen. It looks like they're I don't want to say necessarily wrapping up the new Witcher game, but they're definitely in the home stretch on it.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, they're starting to push forces towards the new Cyberpunk project. So,
Yep.
huzzah!
On the Artalsorian front, they've done some bundles for the Nexus. So
Yeah,
definitely check that out. They also did some bundles on Drive Through RPG.
they released the character creator for Nexus,
Yeah.
which is what I thought the whole thing was about in the first place. I thought it was weird that was like a delayed release.
I think it
Um,
was still being built out, right?
sure, it's very pretty. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet. I don't know. Have you? Like it's
No, I haven't had a chance to play with it.
like
Um,
I they charge money for it, so
yeah,
something which at this time of year is ridiculously in short supply.
yeah, and I have so many other prescription or through that subscriptions. Probably need
Yeah.
to get rid of my Roll20 because I don't really think I use that as much as I do, at least during the pandemic. Um, so maybe I'll just shift it over to this and play around with
Oh, there we go.
them.
Well, speaking of Artal Sorian, it's not a it's not Cyberpunk, but Artel Sorian did reach out and they sent me a copy of the starter kit for Shadow Scar, and it arrived yesterday. I've just barely had a chance to crack it open, and I gotta say, this is a pretty quality set here. I'm not going to do a review on it right now. I figure we'll do a review the next episode.
Yep, and read up on it. But it
Yeah,
seems like
same here.
you'll be able to do a cyberpunk setting, right? I think it's kind of like
Yeah, I mean it's a multi-genre thing where it looks like you'll really be able to do whatever you want with it.
yep.
Um, and I mean, it's just really beautifully put together. Like this box is freaking hefty. Like it may be the heaviest box set I've ever gotten for gaming. Like it's beefy.
Nice.
Again, we'll review it in on the 19th. Cross our fingers, and maybe after that, there's talk of us doing maybe an actual play or an interview with Cody or Terabella Pondsmith. Um, so yeah, Shadow Scar information coming up in the future. Um,
Yeah.
on the comics front, uh, they're still putting out the new Cyberpunk series from Dark Horse. Um,
About a month on delay so far.
yeah, it's a little bit delayed. The first issue is out.
Is it?
I haven't been to the comic book store today, so I don't know if the second issue's out yet or not. But yeah, the first issue is, I believe it's out. Yeah.
Because I saw on their site it says pre-order.
Oh man, I was looking forward to going and picking that up. Damn it. Okay. Never mind. The first issue is not out. Um, I I thought it was already out, and
I mean, maybe
was
it's out.
hoping to pick
I
up.
don't. If you go to their site, it's pre-order
Huh.
it.
I was
Yeah, I
sure.
think I have to. Comic books start trying to buy actual physical copies.
Yeah. Um, Gotta support the comic industry while we can, because digital is taking over everything, and who knows how long the good old floppies are gonna last.
All right. Is there anything else?
Um, on the new front, that's about all I can think of. Exit City and Skin Police are still going on. There's a new Terminator. It's up to issue 4. But yeah, I think we've talked about all those before. World Tree just released their 12th issue. They may be up to 13 by now. It's been a month since I've been in the comic book store, so um, yeah, no, Psycho Squad came out. It came out like 3 weeks ago. I just haven't been into the store to pick it up.
Why their site says pre-order?
Because it's Dark Horse and they're notorious for that kind of thing. Just like, I mean, they're closing down their digital comics. I don't think their digital side is anything they're caring about at the moment.
Right.
But as long as they keep putting out Cyberpunk comics, I'm happy. Um, okay, that's all I can think of for new stuff. We talked about the Electric State. We talked about yeah. Um,
Yeah. Hopefully, when I go to Adepticon at the end of the month, we'll hear some stuff. I'll try to get some information around Combat Zone. See what they have planned for the year. They're talking about maybe adding new gang, something along those lines. I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad it's. I'm so very happy it's still being supported. I really wish I had the disposable income to support that because what they're doing is beautiful. The miniatures are great. The production quality of their materials is fantastic. Um, I'd really wish I could support them more.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I finally finished painting the first 2 edgerunner sets. Right now I'm doing the Aka, my
nice,
Arasakas. So probably post some pictures of them on my Discord.
sweet. Look, I need to share them here, man. Need to
Oh,
share them here.
oh, will do.
Add
So
them to the
let's get
rotation of images.
started, I guess, to maximum metal.
Indeed. This book, I think, was long awaited and long needed. It's primarily written by Craig Sheely, uh, Mark Colburn, which I don't remember seeing him very often, and of course Derek Quintanar. Uh, yeah, this book has long been needed. It details not only like the military aspect on the vehicle front, but it also gives you it standardizes the way vehicles are presented in the game, as well as giving you rules to create your own, uh, both your standard both your standard vehicles plus the rules for now creating powered armor. That was finally added in this book. Um, which for a game that had been so long influenced by Appleseed and Bubblegum Crisis, uh, it was a very welcome addition.
Yep.
I know overall Craig Shealy was not happy. He felt the book was kind of rushed. Um, and there are people who take issue with a few inconsistencies in the book, or maybe some areas that they felt were not covered enough. But I've always enjoyed this book. I have very much enjoyed this book. Like I said, it gives me rules to create vehicles, which even outside of the military aspect, just creating cars and all that, having a standard formula, a standard uniform presentation. It had been long awaited.
Right. And, I never really used the book. I like the book. I like where it will go, but never had call to do any vehicle combat, at least to the level that this book can present. I'm about to use some ACPAs, so that's going to be fun. But other than that, I haven't had too much exposure, at least as a referee, using the rules and designs in here. But so the first part of this section, or how do you want to do this? You want to go break it down by chapter by chapter?
First, like always, I want to talk about the cover.
Right.
The cover of this book is by Alex Okamoto, who's done some other stuff for Artel Saurian and other lines, but I gotta say I don't really. Everything on the front cover is fine except for the ACPA. It just has always looked weird and wrong to me, and I can't put my finger on it. It just does not look right. Something about the proportions. I don't know. It looks really weird to me, and I've never been able to strictly quantify why. And everything else on the cover looks great. The dude in the trench coat is awesome. The dead cyborg is cool. The military vehicle in the background is awesome. I don't know. The powered armor that is the main focus of the cover it just looks weird. Also, the way he's holding his gun, I don't it's just weird. It hits me wrong, and that's funny.
That's a weird side. It looks like it's a side. He's holding it to the side, but he's not. Similar to the Solo. I don't think he would.
Yeah, but I can see how the Solo's holding it. It just doesn't look very comfortable.
No.
It looks like he's getting ready to hurt himself a great deal. But at least it looks physically doable. Whereas the way the ACPA is holding the gun just looks weird and wrong. I don't know how that's supposed to work, and I've tried to figure it out, and it hurts my brain, so I've given up. But it's weird because all the rest of the art in the book is really fantastic.
Credit to Malcolm He, Mike Jackson, and Gary T. Washington.
Yeah. It's as far as mechanical art, this may be the best in the line. Because it's very, very consistent. And once they the stuff they set down here, pretty much remains the way it's consistently portrayed in the rest of the book that follow. Mm-hmm. With the exception of a couple of images get updated for the Firestorm books. But yeah, this I don't know. The cover doesn't do it justice. I'll just say that.
Right.
But beyond that, um, since this book is mostly rules with a few bits of examples, um, we can just cover it uh, section by section briefly, and then when we get to the vehicle examples, we can talk about our favorites there.
Okay. Sure. So the first section is all about vehicle
Let's,
combats. 6 pages in length, and it can be daunting. Try to understand it
yeah,
all.
it like most of the expanded rules for 2020. My advice is to pick and choose what you need for any given moment. Don't try to apply all these rules to every situation. You just create a headache for yourself. You can simplify it out in your head, and you'll be just fine.
Yep.
These rules greatly expand on the former vehicle combat rules we had in Solo of Fortune, and it was a much needed, long awaited uh, glimpse at the rules for vehicle combat.
Yeah. So going back to the predecessors, right before this, you had in the basic book you had a 1 page section on vehicle combat, which
Yeah,
I think
with
was
a
for more theatrical
yeah,
type
it's
of.
definitely theater of the mind stuff, and kind of abstracting it out. Like it gives you a hit table that's really I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as a human body hit table, that doesn't it doesn't apply universally to vehicles. Like some of them, it's not going to work.
Right.
Uh, so it needed some expansion.
And then
And yeah, like you
solo.
said, the rules were super simple.
Yep. And that's great, right? If you want to do something quick, get it out of the way, move along. And then Solo of Fortune 1 presented 5 pages, in which you kind
Yeah,
of get a little more in depth on maneuvering. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Car Wars back in the day. And
yeah. The influence of Car Wars is strong. Was strong, and rightly so, because that game has stood the test of time.
which I can have a sense that Craig Sheely was probably involved.
Well, yeah,
Not for that, or Derek was one time, because I know I'm more into uh, mechanics of games, specifically
yeah,
war games. So,
yeah. By all means, check out our interviews with both Derek and
Craig,
Derek Quintanar and Craig Sheely. They give fascinating insights into their creation of this book and others. Um, for a while, we both were kind of the opinion we'd already reviewed Maximum Metal because of those interviews. But
yeah,
here
pretty
we
much.
are.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the Solo Fortune is not so much about combat as is about the maneuvering and travel. So I think it took it up a different level and took a different approach. Which of course then evolved into Maximum Metal, which I think is more heavily into weapon fire than it is with maneuvering. So, like Solo Fortune 2, it gave you specific types of maneuvers you can do. In Maximum Metal, there's probably a page worth of rules compared to Solo Fortune, which had several. And doesn't really go into the various types of maneuver, kind of helping you in that. Whereas the combat section, all over the place, talking about all types of vehicle combat, whether it's missiles,
Bless you.
bombing, indirect, personal weapons versus vehicles, and just a lot of sorry, a lot of different rules that you might encounter on the battlefield. The one thing I loved about this section is art, the one-page art that
Yeah,
just makes you
the massive
excited.
battle that's happening.
Yeah, that makes you excited.
Yeah, it definitely gets the juices flowing. And like I said, it's consistent. Like the way the vehicles look here, you can definitely like pick out and say this is that, and this is that, and this is that. And at the time, it was the first time I'd ever seen that. Like Cyberpunk 2020 was the first time I'd ever seen in an RPG where the art became consistent. Uh, you know, this vehicle looks like this, and it's going to look like this across our books. There are other vehicles of its type, but if your AV7, your Trauma Team AV7 is going to look like this. Your AV9 is going to look like this. Your Militech Commando ACPA is going to look like this. There might be some slight variation, being customization, but yeah, like before this, like that wasn't really a concern. Like if you look across the Shadowrun books, it's just not really a concern. D&D, it was a little more forgivable, I want to say, because it's fantasy and blacksmithing society. Like, of course, swords are all going to look different, and they'll look like whatever the user wants them to look like. But like dragons, like a red dragon, even in the same game world, or even the exact same dragon, like some named dragon somewhere, will look different from one book to the next. And it was just, personally, it was always kind of off-putting. So I really enjoyed it when this happened with Cyberpunk.
Right. And I also want to just mention that Firestorm Shockwave, we are going to do a review of that, but they also have a different rule set for vehicle combat as well.
Yes, they do.
It is 4 pages, and I think it's a lot more streamlined, simplified.
It is.
And
it is. It is this book. The problems with this book taken care of for the most part. Yeah. Whereas you could call Solo of Fortune the prototype. This is the production, and then Firestorm, that vehicle combat system is the final form with all the bug fixes in place that R. Talsorian was ever going to do for it. At least for the 2021. Obviously Red got its own thing, so
yep. So yeah, I think the reason why this particular system is a problem is because it I don't know, I've read through it quite a few times, and it just I get lost very quickly. I don't know if it's because of how it's presented.
This book really could have used an index. Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, they do give an example, but even the example I didn't feel was enough. I mean, they give an example for every single type of combat. Example, indirect combat, bombing, and maneuvering, and countermeasures. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's very kludgy rules. Try to.
Yeah, they're kludgy, and there are a couple of instances where it'll treat a rule as if it's obvious and standard, but then you find the information for that rule. It's just some little nothing somewhere that like you have to search through the whole book to find. And there's a couple of instances like that, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I think if it was rewritten today, um, like all most modern systems, there would be kind of a flow chart to make you understand how to use
Yeah.
combat, which I think this section definitely. Uh,
Also, they introduced the idea of kills, which is a separate system to track damage with, which does streamline things for larger vehicle combat. But at the same time, it feels kind of GURPSy, or not GURPSy, Riftsy,
mm,
where you've got to track two different kinds of combat, and sometimes in the same combat session. Like if you've got guys running around on foot shooting other infantry, the rules for those two fighting are going to be different than the rules for like the tank shooting the other tank, whatever,
yeah,
ACPA. Um, I know some people prefer the kill system because it is much faster and allows for a quicker like mass combat scenario for the war gamers and all that.
yep,
Um, but
yeah.
yeah,
So
having two different systems doing the same thing is always going to be a pet peeve of mine.
and also doing the calculations on the fly, right? Then you have to think, oh, this is a
Yeah,
personal weapon, so it's divided by this to generate a kill or a penetration. How
exactly.
does armor work? So, next section, and again, this is kind of one of the areas that I loved about 2020 was the vehicle design. So 2020, it seemed like you could design anything. They gave you rules how to design it. Programs, uh, drugs, vehicles. I would you kind of can design weapons in a way with all the different types of modifications that you add. Would have been nice to see some type of system for cyberware, maybe how to create
Yeah,
cyberware. Um, but that's the thing I loved about Cyberpunk is the ability to create your own. Because there is
yeah.
limitations
I
to
mean,
how much they can create out of the in the book to kind of satisfy everyone. And I think there's a problem with a
yeah,
lot of gaming groups who feel that that's all I can choose from. Right? I can't create
yeah.
my
Especially
own
when
or
Techie is one of the primary classes, like or roles. Uh, and techies really, both techies and med techies really get shortchanged as far as how the rules apply to them. Like, sure, there's drug creation rules, but what if you don't want to be a drug dealer or a chemist? So this appeals to that. It gives a, like I said, I very much appreciate the vehicle construction rules, um, even if they get bogged down by themselves. If you just come at it from a well, I'm just going to wing this type philosophy, I think it works much better. Um, where you treat everything as like suggestions of how to handle this, but in the end, this is the format you want it to appear in. Um, and I think that format, I talk about it a lot. The unification of the uniformity of the vehicle um, presentation. It's important. It's important that when you're talking about something mechanically, that it works the same from one game to the next. Like if you're going to give me a car, I need to know how the car functions. I don't need to know how to build the car necessarily, but having the basic stats and the basic stats be the same for all vehicles of that type, it's necessary in my eyes. Even if you don't use it, the fact that it's there is just better than it not being
Right.
there.
Yeah. So, I have a question, fans. What do you guys think about the new 2045 with nomads getting a vehicle to start with? My opinion is,
I think it's about damn time.
yeah, I like it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In 2020, you were very hard pressed to find a vehicle that that a starting character could actually purchase.
Yeah, which I mean, I get it. I get the philosophy behind it. Um, like keep the characters scrambling for money at all times, but the reality is, it's California, and everybody in California has a car. That's not going to change anytime soon.
Well, after the
Uh,
collapse.
it's definitely not going to change after the collapse. I mean, some people may not be able to afford a car, but those people aren't going to be, any kind of professional supporter. Um, Nomads, I think, should have always been more vehicle centric. I think they should have always gotten vehicles. It never made sense to me that they didn't. By their very nature, they need to move around, and the idea that they're just always hitching rides as part of a family is kind of silly to me. Especially since in many places it talks about them, learning how to drive at like the age of 12 and things like this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I think Red did that right. I think that's one of the things that Red really got right was to give nomads vehicles from the start. They're not going to be great vehicles. They're not going to end up with a Porsche at level 2, but being able to have transportation is important. Um,
Yeah, especially for
Especially
like
if you're playing a
getaway, right? I mean,
yeah, if you're playing a character class that relies on transportation, withholding that is just like you don't tell a solo he can't have guns at beginning.
right. And like, and I always hear about games in which, like in the 2020 games, how people were constantly body harvesting. Like, how can you do that without a vehicle? You need a
Yeah,
trunk to
where
throw the
how,
body
are you
parts in.
walking down are you walking down the street like pulling a bag behind you, full of like leaving a blood streak down the sidewalk? Like, are you getting on a bus with like two arms, just like dripping chunks of gore off of them? Like, how does that work? You
Yeah,
need a
how
vehicle.
that works is the C squad is called in, buses surrounding it,
Yeah,
and you.
immediately.
Any,
Everybody immediately jumps off the bus. It gets locked down. The bus driver takes his keys with him. You're fucked.
yeah, but yeah, so the rules here uh, are pretty easy to follow for creating vehicles. This is actually second utility I created on my site was for vehicle creation. So if you go to my site and see the vehicle maker, it's definitely has aged badly. I still
I
want
mean,
to
it's
get back to it and then fix it.
you say that, but at the same time, I think it's a very important tool because, like you said, these rules get kind of kludgy. They're definitely not light or quick. So having an application that takes some of the work away from you, does some of the math for you, is necessary. It's a Your tool is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Um, so the design section also includes all of the weaponry and uh, equipment that you can equip to a vehicle. So this is, I would say, a major chunk of maximum metal. All the different type of heavy weapons that are available.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, you're not going to want for any type of vehicle mounted weapon at all. It's pretty much all here, unless you want to get into some weird, like, homemade bullshit. And even then, you can pretty much figure out what it's going to be from these lists.
And it's pretty thorough, especially like in the equipment department, on things that you might want to add. The point where you can add like a little jacuzzi on your main battle tank.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful.
And of course, these weapons are things you would probably add as defensive systems in a corporate facility as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to create turrets? This is how you do it. You want to create like weapon emplacements or artillery? This is how you do it. Um, it's before this book came out, the only real choice you had was just to take a personal weapon and basically just turn it into, like, use those stats for everything you're going to do. This gives you a lot more choices into how to craft your defensive capabilities, both for vehicles and for static locations. Beyond just, okay, well, there's a simple machine gun up in the corner that blah, blah, blah.
And I think, and this was to Ben Wright's point of the lethality, right? In this book, Raising the Lethality, he was creating full Borgs to make full Borgs like the ultimate weapon, street weapon.
Yeah.
Then this book came out.
Yeah.
He was kind of annoyed. But
yeah, if you listen to both the interviews by Benjamin Craig and Craig, they talk about how they each were working on these. Like, Benjamin was working on full conversions, Craig was working on maximum metal, but they weren't working together. They had no idea what the other party was doing. And there's some disjoining that happens because of that.
Yep.
They really should have been collaborating. In fact, I think full conversions should have probably just been included in this. But then, like I said, that would require them working together, and that the final product probably would have ended up looking different.
But with these weapons come the ability to take out a Borg.
Yeah.
It definitely supplies that. Read Niner?
On the... Go ahead.
Sorry, so, Reninded is asking if we ever used military grade vehicles in a campaign. I have not. I mean, I've had AVs, but nothing like from a combat point of view, right? An AV would do a pass by. The players would very rarely be at the command of an AV. So in my games, not really. I never got to the point of playing with this. Now, if I ran a fourth corporate war, I could see probably doing something like that for the land battles at the end. But I have never used. I don't know, Derek. Have you ever used them?
Yes, I have used them extensively. Actually, I've run 2 different long-term military campaigns. I've run a high-level, like, espionage campaign, police campaigns, including, like, campaigns based around C-SWAT. So yeah, I've used this stuff a great deal. I've had characters who had their own ACPAs. I've had characters who, flew around in AVs and were in control of them.
Did you use?
I mean, granted, they didn't technically own them. For the most part, yeah.
How did you find
Yeah, for the
the
most part,
play for the rules? Like doing it, running them.
like I said earlier, you're best off treating them as suggestions and using what you need when you need it and ignoring it the rest of the time. Uh, it's there to have a standardization. So if you have a question, if you really need to get to the nitty gritty of a situation, you've got the rules to do so. Um, and they're going to be the same rules from one situation to the next, but you don't need to look up every rule every time. It's most of the stuff can just be run off the cuff. Um, the reality is when you shoot something with a 140 millimeter uh, artillery shell, there's really not a whole lot that's going to survive that. If you hit somebody with a 2 centimeter rail gun round, again, tank to tank warfare, it moves fairly quickly, and I don't know. It never really created much of a problem with me. But by the time that I was doing that kind of thing, I had reread this book so many times that at the time, I could have quoted from it just verbatim off the page. That was, a good 2 decades ago. I could not do that at all anymore. I can barely remember what day it is. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed my higher level campaigns. I wouldn't recommend them for low level campaigns or beginner characters, beginner players who've never played the system before,
Or beginner
but
referees.
or beginner referees. Good God, no. Keep shit simple for you at the start. Uh, but yeah, if you're experienced and you want to run something on the higher end of stuff, if you want to emulate a military environment, then yeah, this book is necessary.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
it's a general advice for referees is, as you become better at being a referee, you kind of know what stuff you want to throw away, how you can speed up gameplay at certain times, and either, get down into the rules or pull back and just do some hand waving.
exactly. Yeah, you definitely don't want to bite off more than you can chew before you're ready for it. And yeah, like I said, as you progress, you want to run, you know, an Appleseed style adventure where the characters have ACPA and full conversions are running around all willy nilly. Uh, you want to run some Venus Wars type stuff or Ghost in the Shell with their Tachikomas fighting like giant tanks and shit. Um, or even, I mean, I've in a shorter lived military campaign. I had characters playing pilots. They were jet fighter pilots. They fly in the really, really expensive stuff. Um, it's good to have it there. It's not going to be for every GM. It's certainly not going to be for every situation, but
Yep.
it's good to have it there.
Yes, and available. So it helps you with your own designing of a campaign and what you'd like to play, as well as the players. Just to know there are unlimited options on what kind of campaign you can run. So yeah, so that's it for the design section. Um, don't think there was anything really lacking, in my opinion, when this first came out. I mean, granted, weaponry has changed in the past 30 years, but
The
at the time,
the
I
only
don't
Go
think
ahead.
you need. at the time, I don't think there was anything that was missing. Just because Craig Sheely seems like he is a very thorough guy when it comes to military equipment.
He was. He's definitely very much into the mechanical side of things, and very much into. He was a big fan of Twilight 2000 and Mechton. Uh, he likes his crunch. The only thing I think this section was missing were rules for creating water vehicles. Um, and that was originally handled beautifully by was it Super Dan or Morning Man? One of the two created the max cavitation rules, which was basically maximum metal for boats, um, which was a great addition. I'm pretty sure I've got that on the archives at Data Fortress.
I want to.
But I think that's.
Yeah, I thought there was. Maybe I'm thinking of airships. I know there was an errata that our Talsorian put out, adding in.
Yeah, but it was just like a page or a 2-page thing. It didn't.
It didn't add much, I know.
Creating something that, yeah, creating rules for stuff that floats or submerges. Uh, it's its own thing.
Yeah, did
but this book was.
Stormfront do some rules?
I don't remember. I don't remember it having rules for creating the submarines or the boats, but they did add a bunch of that stuff.
Problem is, like, a lot of that stuff is like in a little sidebar off, you know, completely
Yeah, it's
out of the way that you're like, oh, well, that's useful, and you forget about it, and yeah, exactly
yeah.
where in the freaking book to find it.
Consistently, that is our Talsorian's biggest problem with layout. And again, if they just add indexes, these problems would be solved. But finding information in these books, especially rules information, can, when it comes to these like minor things that they just like to pepper around on sidebars or deep in the heart of a paragraph, it can get frustrating.
Yeah.
I would have hoped that they would have learned from that with Red, and I guess they kind of did. They learned a bit, but it's still a problem. It's the only that's the only real criticism I have with the way they lay stuff out, like over the years, like consistent.
So no, there was no submarines or boats in all ground view.
No.
Red none.
No, the closest you get is a like a hover type situation. But
Yeah, Solo of Fortune 2 did produce Cyberwalks.
Yeah.
So you could create basically a mech. However, it wasn't going to be a very big mech. I think the maximum weights you could get up to
it
was
depends.
maybe.
If you start adding legs, you can get those things pretty large.
Yeah, but rules wise, I think you could probably get up to 10 tons of a vehicle with legs. Yeah, and the rules also don't cover like massive vehicles, like a.
Yeah, it's not going to give you rules for aircraft carriers or
Right, or something like what is it? Nick Fury, shields.
the helicarrier.
Helicarrier, yeah.
No, there's none of that.
Yeah. So there's
basically when I created those kind of things for Data Fortress, I was just making stuff up on the fly. I was looking at other game systems stats and shit like that. I'm shameless.
One thing I would have liked to have seen is like some rules or guidelines around how to create a punk knot.
Yeah, Yeah,
I mean, you
they
could use this to make a punk knot, but I would have liked to see like how you throw it together because punk knot is going to have a lot of waste because the systems aren't going to be fully integrated and manufactured like a corporation would.
yeah. Um, Also, I don't know. The idea of punk knots always having AV engines seems kind of silly. Like I would think buses would probably be the standard punk knot base. Uh,
True.
AV seems a little high tech for some like combat zone thugs.
Right. So that's it for around the design, and then they take the design section and show you what you can build with. There is quite a bit of all types of vehicles.
Yeah,
Well, civilian, military, whatever you need. I would have to say that the one I really liked out of this section was the EEC Air Jeep. Kind of reminds
really.
me. Yeah, well, I mean, before Cyberpunk, my sci-fi game of choice was Traveler, and
That
the
makes
Air
sense.
Jeep looks like an air raft. So I kind of like
Yeah.
the look of it, like a utilitarian
Um,
flying Jeep.
I love the new design for the AV9.
Yeah,
I just adore it. Uh, and the AV8 Assault Aerodyne. Like before this, every AV you'd seen in the books was basically
a brick.
like, yeah, it was a flying van, and that's cool. I love the idea that the standard AV is a flying van, but having more combat or utilitarian designs for AVs, um, that works for me, and I really like the Hind influences on the AV8 and the modular aspects of the AV9, where you can trade out the big, basically pods for they can hold cargo. You can set it up for a medevac center. Um, I like that concept. It reminded me of if you ever watched the original V series that ran in the 80s. Their little spacecraft, you could add you could add sections to them, and each section was like a customizable thing, and you'd see it like most of the time it was going to be either cargo or personnel carriers that they would add to these. Like basically you stretch out the front and the back and you throw in shit in between, and like by itself it's like a little fighter shuttlecraft, but then you add these pods. And yeah, it reminds me of that anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to
All right.
start rambling.
Yeah. The one thing that I didn't like is the SM Dragon. So the SM Dragon is the Sikorsky Mitsubishi Dragon Chrome 1. One thing, I think it's a lot uglier than the Chrome one.
I disagree
And
100%.
go ahead. You could disagree. Doesn't make you right.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, no, I'll show you how right I am. I'll
and
let
the
you
other
finish.
thing
Go
I
ahead.
didn't like about it was in the description, it talks about how it's a Euro Soviet child of the last century. Sikorsky is a US company, and Mitsubishi is a Japanese company. So, how did it
Yeah,
become a Euro Soviet vehicle? I don't know. I assume that the people didn't know Sikorsky was a US
I
brand.
mean, but we're talking about like Craig Sheely, who
Yeah,
lives for this kind of
I know.
stuff. So I don't know how that got past it.
The only reason why I know
I don't know.
Sikorsky
I don't
is
know.
a American brand is because they have a plant right down the road from me.
Well, yeah. Plus, they made the SR-71
Yep.
Blackbird, and tons of our helicopters, like the Blackhawk. Uh, well, they were part of the SR-71 project. Anyway, I love I this art is so much better to me than the way it was presented in Chrome One. Uh, I make no bones about my. I'm not going to call the Chrome One vehicle art bad. I'm
Disagree.
just not going to call it good. Uh,
Disagree. I think it's a
I
lot better art
I
than some other vehicles I've seen in these others.
well,
Again,
this helicopter looks like a helicopter. It doesn't look like an abstract bit of squiggly lines, um, and done in ink wash. Like
yeah,
I don't like abstract when it comes to the vehicles. I will never like it. Um, I will take a bad representation over an abstract representation any day. Uh, and I quite like this. Having grown up on military bases, large helicopters are always something that catches my eye.
right.
They're very utilitarian. This is a large, large helicopter. Um, the tail is wrong. I will admit to that 100%. Like when the rotors go around, they would hit the tail and it just wouldn't work. Um, and the rotors are drawn poorly as well because they're all like at different angles to each other. Uh, but overall, I very much think this is an improvement over the Chromebook design.
Disagree.
Although I did like the dual rotor aspect of the original design. I thought that was
Right. When you have a heavy vehicle or a heavy helicopter, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna have the dual blades.
I mean, you say that, but our heaviest lifting helicopters are our single blade.
Are they?
Uh, yeah, they're I forget the actual designation of them, but they look like giant mosquitoes, and they're basically sky cranes, is what they are. But they're single rotor. They don't have room. They don't like have pods for anything. They're just there to lift shit up and carry it. Um,
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree to disagree.
oh, so you agree?
I do not.
That's awesome. If you
Not agree
disagree
with
to
you.
disagree, that's agreeing with you. That's but yeah, no, we can disagree on our approval of this art or not. That's
I mean,
fine.
I love the rest of the art in the, but that one picture.
I think the only image that I don't really care for is the Dark Warrior assault motorcycle.
Yeah,
Um, and it's not that I don't like the concept. I do like the concept. It's just
looks
it
too
seems
forward
too
heavy.
long to be functional. Yeah, too forward heavy, too long. Like I can't figure out what they were going for. It also seems kind of lopsided, like just
Mm.
the way it's presented. Um, I don't know. It's a weird one. Uh, I like I said, I like the concept. I think if they shortened it, it'd probably be much better. Because it kind of reminds me of the Ram motorcycle from GI Joe. If you like grabbed the front and the back wheel and stretched it out.
Right.
Yes, I'm a nerd.
As we all are.
I mean, I've used Cyberpunk to run a GI Joe game before,
And it's
so
perfect for it.
it really is. I also really love the Peterbilt 2000.
A
I really love all
long
the
hauler.
vehicles. Yeah, a long hauler. You can use that as the basis for your Nomad, and I have for Nomad convoys who strip military vehicles anyway. And this was before Neo Tribes, so Uh, some of the other vehicles, like the BMW 2020, seem taken straight from Bubblegum Crisis or other anime of the sort, which at the anime back then had a very, like when they're drawing military vehicles, they look like extrapolations of what military vehicles would look like. They're big, they're heavy, I don't know. It works for me.
Yep. So moving on, we get the introduction to ACPAs. Again, this section starts with rules for combat, which are about 8 pages, so it's longer than the vehicle rules. And there's a lot more kind of exceptions and how you do ACPA. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why I probably would have done vehicle before I would have done ACPA combat.
Yeah, I mean, they almost should have been separate books.
Yep.
Um, I think ACPA, and I think Craig agrees that ACPA would have benefited um, from taking a longer look at their vehicle creation rules and a longer look at the ACPA at the full conversion rules that Benjamin Wright was creating for Chromebook 2. Because really, that's what an ACPA is. It's a combination of a full conversion as far as like size and chassis and application with the heavier military vehicles. But I mean, they wanted to emulate things like the Starship Troopers anime, Maddox 01,
Bubblegum Crisis.
Bubblegum Crisis, like not the hard suits necessarily, but like the police ACPA and whatnot. Appleseed with their landmates.
Yeah.
There was a glut of that, and it grabbed everybody's attention in the late '80s, early '90s.
Right. And I think the combat rules are not that different than the. There are some special cases, but I think this is if you can learn the first system, you'll be able quite easily.
I like that the options for ACPA translate just fine to full conversions as well. Like if you've got an ACPA weapon, well, that's a full conversion weapon. If it can fit in a power armor, it can fit in a fucking like body. For the most part, like some of the artillery options get kind of ridiculous. But...
Yep. So after the combat rules and the maneuvering rules, you get into the design.
Man, I love the art in this section.
The design is actually to create the base of ACPA is quite a bit of math, more math heavy than the vehicles. A lot of different calculations and choices you have to make.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. The options like run the gamut. Anything you could really think of to add to like a suit of powered armor, including a ton of shit you would have never considered, is thrown in there. How much space they take up, where they can be added. Yeah, it's a lot of rules here. They get more in depth here, really, than they do with the vehicle section rules. And there's just so much. There's so many options. Like it's mind blowing how much thought they put, like how much thought Craig put into the various options for a system that it worked for the time. I argue that it still works now just fine. Um, but it is a bit much. I will say that it's a bit much, and sometimes it's a little inconsistent.
Yep.
Some of it's just downright nasty.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. So yeah, so you basically can create different types of ACPAs. It's all based on body or a frame, and you go from there and you choose one there, and then depending upon that size will determine how many spaces you have, and that's one thing I didn't quite like about this particular design system was you can have a quarter of a space. Uh, Round up. I
Yeah,
mean, instead of
round up.
calling it
Just you
spaces, call it
don't hurt
slots.
yourself.
You know?
That works much better. Yeah, round up. It's otherwise the math will. You'll start noticing your eyes bleeding and your ear starts crackling as things inside your brain grind to a halt.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like he said, just round up.
And honestly, ACPAs I think are more infantry killers than they are going to go up against a main battle tank. I mean, sure they could
Yeah, I
probably
mean,
take a main battle tank out, but they're not going to be they're not going to live in the world for very long afterwards.
yeah, any ACPA big enough to carry weaponry that's going to take out a main battle tank is going to be too big to move anywhere. It's going to be too heavy. It's going to have to basically anchor itself to the ground, and there are rules for that before it shoots anything, which looks and sounds cool. But the reality is like they're not going to replace tanks. Tanks are infinitely better at doing what they do. If you want to clear out an urban environment, send in a squad of ACPA, and they will do that job. But if you want to hold that against a military, you send in tanks. If you want to take out artillery, you send in tanks. Something that can survive. Something that can move quickly enough and long enough to make that journey. That's my thing. Really, is they don't go into the power source for ACPA. They just kind of leave that as a given, like they do with cyberware. Uh, so they don't really talk about range and like how long your fuel is going to last for an ACPA. They do in the abstract, but
True.
they don't really go into the detail that's needed.
Yeah, vehicles actually have a range.
Yeah,
It's interesting that I never noticed the ACPAs. I know they talk about how you have to charge them up and that there's a certain runtime, but there's no way in which you can improve that lifespan.
yeah. It's just like this weird arbitrary number that you really can't mess with it at all. We kind of ignored that part because it just bogs everything down, and there's no real means to keep track of it. Like there's no like using this system drains this much power,
Right.
or you can
Here's a
conserve
yeah.
power by doing these things.
Right, and
So I didn't
having
really,
like
yeah,
fuel cells and saying this fuel cell gives you enough power to do this, then you could add more fuel cells onto the 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 ACPA to make it more of a long range kind of scout type of role. So, I mean, you could I mean, you could get more detailed. Yes, I agree. But even though how complicated it is, it could get even more complicated. And
yeah, it
and
could
that
get much
maybe,
more complicated than it's actually presented.
but I think most of this
Uh,
book was more towards the gun porn than anything. firepower.
I love gun porn.
So, the final section is the actual implementation of the design, which are a
Yeah,
bunch
the
of
ACPA
different
catalog.
versions. There is various companies. It was interesting to see Zetatech being kind of a person who generates ACPAs.
Yeah,
Just because
your standard, like the names you would expect, Arasaka, Militech, like they're here. But you also get Mexican medals. I like that they have the polymer one shot equivalent of ACPA in the game. I love that shit.
right. But like Zetatech, I would never have thought that maybe I would see Zetatech creating more of a civilian model, which is one thing that I was kind of disappointed that they didn't have civilian models of
Yeah, there
power.
should have.
I know it's power armor, but it's really an exoskeleton, right?
Yeah, like it would have been nice for them to include like a power loader from Aliens, something
Yep.
of that nature. Like
Right.
I could definitely see these like power armor frames being used in construction and uh, cargo handling and things of that
Mining.
nature. And like I wish mining, most definitely, hazardous environments. Um,
Yeah,
the
like
closest we
a lot more
get,
space uh, spacesuits, right?
yeah, the only real space dedicated suit we get is the Spider, the orbital air Raven microside Spider, which is also as this and the Grasshopper are as close as you get to Bubblegum Crisis style hard suits as presented in the game at this point. Um,
Yeah, and hard shells in Stormfront are not necessarily power armor, but I would consider they are. Anything that's like an
yeah,
exoskeleton, I would consider falling under the ACPA. I think maybe that acronym is
well,
kind of
I
more
I
military
think the
geared.
difference is, and this is the way I handled it with the Datafortress 2020, my giant military catalog there. When it comes to powered armor, ACPA are very specifically like a large, bulky suit. You drive it more than wear it.
Right.
Whereas the hard suits, they're really more than anything just kind of energized Metal Gear. Uh, they will boost your abilities, but you move around in it like you're wearing a suit. Now you can jack straight in and like have it react to everything via neural connection, and of course it'll make it faster, your reaction speed. But at the end of the day, it's going to feel like two different things:
Right.
walking tank versus suit of armor.
Right.
As a humongous fan of Bubblegum Crisis and Appleseed and all and the animes of that era that dealt with those things, I love this section. I waited for it patiently. I tried creating my own powered armor before this. It was very limited effect, and most GMs looked at it. Most of the GMs I had looked at it and were like, "No, you can't have that. Are you out of your fucking mind?" So, yeah, it was nice to see. It
Yeah.
was very nice to receive this. Um,
And Stormfront actually presents the EVEA, which is extra vehicular power armor. I think they were trying to go towards the concept of a civilian type of model for an ACPA. But then again, you have in where's the WADs? Were those in Chrome
Chromebook
3?
3?
Yeah. So the WADs are based off of an ACPA, right? In which they put in the servos and
Yeah, they use the same
pseudo
like
intelligence.
character sheet type thing, and I love the character sheet that they provide for this. By the way,
Yes, and
uh,
I was one of the requests from me to make an ACPA generator. It took a little while, but I finally got it up and running on my site. It's been there for probably a couple of years. But yeah, the logic that I had to do to be able to create it, interesting. But yeah, I also integrated WAD, so you can actually create something like a Chimera. Well, the Chimera is more of a tank than it is a WAD, but it's close.
yeah, it's a it's a walker. The Chimera is a walker.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, really, they just wanted to recreate the climax to Ghost in the Shell. That's
Yeah.
really what they wanted to do, and they did a good job of it. The thing's terrifying.
Oh my God, is it? What was more terrifying was the thing in Dinosaur, the Militech.
Yeah,
That robot was fucking
yeah.
scary.
That. I hated that you couldn't fight it. Like
Yeah.
you just couldn't do anything to it.
Even,
So it became more like a horror thing. But
yeah.
at the same time, it was horrifying, and I was terrified of it. I ran from that thing like a child screaming for my mommy.
Right.
So what's your favorite ACPA?
Mean. And the thing about it is the Boris. Just because there's so much art in this book showing the Boris in action.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I like the sleek
It's weird that
design of the spider. The spider kind of gives me that anime vibe of power armor.
It very much reminds me of Largo's. I think it was Largo's power armor from Bubblegum Crisis.
Yep. What about you?
I love the Militech Commando. It's just of the power armor presented, it's the best example of powered armor in the book. It's just one. It looks like it's like an updated version of the Maddox 01 power armor. It looks very functional. It looks very perfected, I want to say, while still maintaining like an infantry utilitarianism. I love the Commando. But honestly, if I had to say, I love the Dynalar Zetatech Grasshopper because it's the lowest end, and it shows you between the two of those powered armor suits, you get the potential for everything in between. Yeah, those are my two favorites.
Yeah.
Um, the grasshopper is what let me create uh, bubblegum crisis style hard suits, not in terms of capability, but in terms of form and function. Well, not really function, but form definitely. Because you're not going to get the power output in Cyberpunk 2020 that the hard suits in Bubblegum Crisis had. You're not going to have. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
And the one thing to note about this book, or at least the EPA, there is a kind of couple paragraphs talking about a dragoon versus an ACPA. What are the strengths between each? And honestly, I think a squadron. I would rather take a squadron of dragoons over a squadron of ACPA. Both sides are going to take heavy damage, but I think the dragoons would win out.
yeah, I mean the dragoons are going to be faster, just by virtue of like it's their body. They're not having to translate the mental command into the physical action translated into the mechanical action in the same way that ACPA are. It's just going to be like moving their legs. That's it.
Yep.
And they're going to move faster. They're going to carry comparable weaponry. Like the ACPA are heavier. They'll be able to carry some bigger stuff, but it's not really going to be at a scale that's going to matter much in that one-on-one. The Dragoon wins every time.
Right. And the other thing with the dragoon is, you blow off its arm, it's going to keep going. You blow off an ACPA, the pilot is going to be hurting. He's going to be hurting bad.
It depends on the ACPA. Like if you look at some of these, there's no way the pilot's arms are in the arms of the ACPA. And I'm just assuming that those operate via neural interface. There's no other explanation.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing it really doesn't get into is whether or not you do. Like, the grasshopper, you definitely have them. I mean,
Yeah,
all of them look like
yeah.
your legs should be able to go in there into at least
The legs, yes. It's the arms where things become a problem.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the Russian arms Boris, I can't for the life of me figure out how the arms would functionally work inside there. They'd have to be like sticking straight out to the side of you and just your like elbows moving up and down. And
Right.
so I would think that they'd just be kind of folded up in front of you inside the torso chassis while you control it via neural interface. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about the Appleseed style hard suits is they have the slave arms.
Mm-hmm.
And Shiro really put some thought into how that would work.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah, it looks like these are suits that look like they would work. Very heavily influenced by the power loader from Aliens.
So, Redined, should a Nomad be able to get an ACPA as their vehicle? I don't think so because
starting out,
yeah, I think the ACPAs are more short range type of weaponry, right? I don't think I have my vision of them is a copter is going to drop them in to whatever combat zone they cover. They're not necessarily a long range vehicle, similar to the full Borgs lever.
yeah, like if a Nomad pack did have access to powered armor, which in my game there are some that do, they're all going to be cobbled together from broken pieces found here and there. Nothing's going to be brand new, and they're going to be transported around by truck until they're absolutely needed.
Yeah.
Um,
So like an
so could
AV9 would be carrying a squadron of ACPAs and drop them into a combat zone and pick them up after after the fighting's done, or for any type of extraction.
um,
Ospreys and other helicopter things that
yeah,
get them out of there.
like a beginning nomad? No, there's no way I would ever let a beginning nomad have an ACPA. But if they want to construct one, or go on the lengthy journey to find one, uh, and like rebuild it, yeah, I would allow that. For advanced characters, sure, but it's not going to be something they're going to be able to use. It's not going to be like Fallout, where they're just running around in powered armor all the time. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and for Red, I believe Jay Gray, James, have often said that ACPAs are just exoskeletons with armor, and as a
Yeah,
tech, you can design your own.
yeah. When we interviewed Jay Gray, he was all like, the ability to create your own powered armor was always in the game, like day one. You just have to put some like imagination into it, but it's you just grab a linear frame and add armor to it.
But I could see a DLC coming out that kind of clarifies or starts expanding.
Yeah, I mean they've already started doing that. Um, didn't Chrome Black have a powered armor in there, or am I thinking of something?
Maybe. Something close.
Uh, but yeah, you can definitely create powered armor in Cyberpunk Red. You can really create full conversions in Cyberpunk Red. They're just not going to be, well, I mean, they're going to be whatever you want it to be. Creating anything, you want to use some hand wavium, just, make some shit up to make it work if things aren't working the way you need them to work, within reason.
Yep.
Who would never let again
Night
our
City.
R9?
Yeah.
Who would never let an ACP on the streets of Night City? Because I guarantee you, the corporations have them, the police department has them,
I think you have to have licensed to be having them.
construction companies, like we said, we could see them having them.
Now, keep in mind, during the Fourth Corporate War, towards the end, during the Hot War, there were ACPAs storming the streets.
Yeah, and a lot of them were disabled, and I guarantee you, any gang members still in the city or just techs with, that crazy look in their eyes were gathering up those broken pieces. So yeah, I could definitely see they'd be really, really rare. And the minute anybody stepped on the street in a stolen or cobbled together ACPA, like C-SWAT is coming. Like that rings all the bells. But sure, like I would say they exist. I would say the idea of your standard Night City edge runner getting their hands on one is pretty slim. But never say never. Like a determined guy will get it. He may only ever be able to use it once, but it could turn into like a ACPA version of the Killdozer scenario, where the one dude just has this thing and goes on a rampage, builds it in his garage.
Yep. So that's kind of it for Maximum Metal.
Okay, I see what you're saying, Re9. A GM would never let them on the streets of Night City. Here's the thing with that. I will never introduce something in my game as far as tech level that the characters can interact with, but not potentially get their hands on. You're never going to see me throw a sniper rifle that if the good guys kill that guy, they can take the sniper rifle. If there's a vehicle that is used against them, there's the potential for the PCs to get it as well. It's just I'm not the kind of GM who orbital strikes characters just because I get a wild hair blast. I don't do that.
Well, for me, I would use it as a deterrent, right? And it wouldn't just be one.
Most definitely,
It might be one or two, and a squad of infantry, and a
it'll be C-SWAT showing up with like 1 to 2 ACPA and the full comp, the rest of the team right behind them with their big guns. Like the chances of a PC getting an ACPA are slim to none, but the chances it's never going to be zero. I'll say that.
Right, and you also have to think like a corporate, right? I'm not going to put resources in a place that I could lose, right? Especially big, hard, expensive military ordnance. You're not going to do that unless you're going to go there with pretty overwhelming force. And
although at the same time, there's also the corporate philosophy of, well, if you have a problem, throw money at it until it's not a problem anymore.
Until it starts affecting your bottom line, right?
Sure.
Unless you're a psycho and you have a resource 10 and you don't care, but the shareholders are going to care. Right?
Yeah, eventually somebody's going to care. You're gonna have to answer to somebody. But yeah, I could see like high-level drug dealers or fixers. I could see them having one in reserve just in case. Like the idea of a civilian in 1980 having an M203 or M16 with an M203 underbarrel grenade launcher was not something that you had to worry about. But Tony Montana pulled one out at the end of Scarface.
So, Militech issued ACPAs for cops? Yes, I'm sure.
Absolutely. 100%
control.
ACPA, riot control.
Doing a raid.
Yeah, regular SWAT. Yeah, I could definitely see. In my game, they definitely have powered armor.
Walking the streets for doing just a beat, like just patrolling?
No, you're not going to just see them walking the beat. They're not going to be on patrol. They're not going to be, unless it's like a severe, like security situation. Like, well, the president's in town, so we need extra security. You're not going to see an ACPA just hanging out in the corner. Like, no.
Yeah,
but would the police have them? Yeah, 100%.
And you also have to think how many of an ACPA is going to be in the city, right? How many of the corporate assets would be lingering around? And, the base book and the corporate books kind of give you an outline of what are the assets of a corporation, right? Which means those are the corporate asset, give or take, right? You could always fudge it and say, oh, they have double the number. But when you apply those numbers and think about, okay, how many offices do they have? Who's going to have what type of vehicles? And then just start parsing out the numbers. You're going to see that there's probably not going to have a lot of them in a particular city. So always keep that in mind.
On top of that, even the unarmored, like, civilian ACPA that exists for like construction companies, I say civilian, but it would really be corporate interests. But for like construction companies, mining interests, cargo loaders, things like that, even then, those things are going to be very carefully monitored. they're not going to be things that are just going to go missing and nobody's going to notice. They're not going to be things that aren't surrounded by security uh, in their downtime. There are going to be powered armor running around Night City in many aspects, but none of it's going to be easy to acquire. And for a player character to acquire even pieces of an ACPA, it's going to be some really extensive work on his part getting it to any kind of usable, functionable item. Because it's not like he can just go down to the automotive store and buy parts for it. Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yep. So
Now, in to wrap things up about Maximum Metal, there are a bunch of tables at the end that are of varying amounts of helpfulness. Plus the aforementioned blank ACPA character, or basically character sheets. They're powered armor blank sheets to create your own and stat them out, or just like customize one. In the end, I go ahead.
If you have the most recent version of Maximum Metal, there is a errata in it, which is around 3 pages long. So you definitely want to read up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the end, I still recommend this book. Other people have had varying success with things like the Mechton 2 book, Road Strikers 2, which is like being able to create it's the Cyberpunk Mechton vehicle creation rules for that game. That's fully compatible and back and forth. I can see the benefits to using either. But like I said, I still recommend this book. The art's fantastic. The concepts and the uniformity that are laid down were much needed. For those who look at it and see the chonkiness of the rules and some of the inconsistencies, there is good news. Since our interview with him, Craig Sheely has been working on basically a rewrite of vehicle creation rules that he intends to cover everything from bicycles to powered armor to spacecraft. I mean, from what I can tell, I don't know. He's gotten a real job again recently, so I don't know how quickly he's progressing on this, but I'm very excited at the prospect. Anyway, those are my final thoughts on the book. How about you, Will?
I love the ability to create your own stuff when it comes to a game.
Amen.
Like anything in which and also provide a list of stuff you've created, right? Which this book does, right? It gives you examples of every single type of vehicle you could create with this system, and kind of present it to the fans. And even later in the publishing of the various books, when they started to actually adhere to Maximum Metal rules, adding additional vehicles to, which are great. I mean, I just love systems that allow you to kind of plug and play, but also give you some base things on. I akin it to like D&D 3.5, in which with monsters you could just create whatever type of monster you want and make it work. But yeah,
Exactly. 100% agreed.
I like that about a system because the one thing I hate is here is this, and we're not going to tell you why these rules work the way they do for a game system.
Yeah.
So overall, I like this book, and I wish I was able to use it a lot more than I have had in the past. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll run a tanker campaign. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
mean, I think we've said about everything we could say about Maximum Metal.
And we're pretty much at time. So,
Yeah,
all
very
right.
well. That worked out really well as far as timing goes.
Yep. So next show we are going to be doing a review of Shadow Scar, how it relates to Cyberpunk, uh, things we like about it, um, and maybe like Derek said, maybe we might do a type of live play. Who knows? Other things, I'm trying to get more authors and writers for Cyberpunk to come and join us and do some interviews. We have one interview kind of set up. I'm going to hammer Mr. Barefoot to get some more going. I know he's been
Coming for you, Rob.
he's been a little busy, thing as they just got back from Gamma. I think there's probably going to be a few months in which I can try to hammer on him to set up something before Gen Con. And then I know at the end of the year they do PAX Unplug. So I'm Cybersmily. You can come see my site at cybersmily.net. I have tons of utilities for running your Cyberpunk 2020 game as well as your Cyberpunk Red. Not as much as it looks like the Nexus platform is doing. I think I kind of shied away from doing a character builder for Red just because there was already an app out there, and it seems like there's going to be more goodness for Cyberpunk Red from a digital front. So I've kind of been shying away from that. Other things is I have my own Discord server. A lot of activity from some old school players talking about things. I'm also on a lot of other Discords, Cyber Nation Uncensored, R. Talsorian, Monster Fight Club, the Cyberpunk 2020 or 2077 game also has a channel, and I'm also on a bunch of various West March servers. Don't really frequent them too much, but I occasionally lurk and check out what they're talking about. I'm also on Reddit on the Cyberpunk Red Reddit, as well as the Cyberpunk 2020 Reddit, and the Cyberpunk Combat Zone Reddit as well. So that's where you can check me out. Also, I am dipping my toe into more social media by going to Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
Yeah. So I'm there under cybersmily.bluesky.social, I guess. Oh. Yeah, so that's it from me.
I am Wisdom000, aka Derek Bernier. I run Datafortress2020, the largest, most comprehensive Cyberpunk 2020 site out there. If you enjoyed the content of tonight's show, you'll very much want to check out my vehicle catalog, my Miracle Mile vehicle catalogs, as well as my military vehicle catalogs on the site. There's plenty of goodness inspired and coming straight from this book there. Lots of ACPA, lots of military vehicles, lots of civilian vehicles. More than you can imagine, really. I'm on Facebook at the Datafortress2020 Facebook group, the Cyberpunk 2020 Facebook group, and the Cyber Nation Uncensored Facebook groups. where I'm either a mod or an administrator at these various sites. I'm not on Twitter. I am on Reddit at the various Cyberpunk Cyberpunk threads, groups, whatever they call them, where I lurk. I also lurk on the Discords at most of the same ones you can find Smiley at. So if you want to reach out to us, you can go through any of these venues. I'm also on Blue Sky, although I don't have the information in front of me because I never really look at it. I just haven't gotten there yet. I will, I promise. But no, if you want to reach out to us, we absolutely love to hear from you. We love to hear your criticisms, comments, complaints, suggestions. If you've got information that'll help us with a future show or just an idea for it, we absolutely welcome that. If you have any questions you've got, we love talking about Cyberpunk. That's why we do the show. We'll talk with you about it as well. So feel free to reach out.
Yep.
We'd like to thank Rob Mulligan and Cybernation Uncensored for hosting us tonight. Yeah, and yes. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening. Sorry I didn't post any announcements that the show is going to be on tonight. That's my bad. Like I said, everything that could go wrong went wrong for me today. But yeah, we very much look forward to seeing you again on the 19th. Where hopefully, well, like Rob said, or like Will said, we'll be doing a review of Shadowscar, the newest product line from Artel Saurian. And yeah, we very much look forward to seeing you then.
Sounds good. Till next time.
Cybernation Uncensored.